really excited this morning because we are previewing Wild Wild Space, at least the trailer, and we're going to be talking to Ashley Vance. Hello, Ashley, as well as Ross Kauffman. So we have a few people joining. I don't normally go on this early, but we'll let a couple of people join before we play the trailer for you, so you know exactly what we're talking about as this comes out tomorrow. So if you guys want to maybe say a little something before the trailer.
Yeah, I'll let Ross take it.
Yeah, no, we're really excited. Our movie Wild Wild Space is coming out on HBO tomorrow, July 17th, 9 p.m. We spent years making this film. It's really exciting. And your space community knows a lot more about this going into it than I ever did. Yeah. Going into it, I didn't know anything about space. So I'm sure it'll be a fun ride for everybody. Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I am exceptionally giddy. This is a result of many years of work and a project that had as many ups and downs as a rocket startup along the way. And so just the fact that it's actually gonna appear on HBO is a dream come true. Ross he's a Academy Award winning director and is used to all this stuff, but this is my first big film, and so I couldn't be more thrilled. And I think, just for your audience, even for space aficionados, I think there's going to be, you've never had a camera in the rooms for some of the things that happen in this film and in like the history of the space industry. And so I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's also going to be a lot funnier than people imagine. We did a screening in Washington, D.C., and people were laughing almost the entire 90 minutes throughout the movie. And so it's got a lot of drama, and it's funnier than I think most documentaries are.
Yeah, it was funny. I watched it last night, so it's very fresh in my mind, and I loved it. So, Ashley, of course, this is based on your book, correct?
It's inspired by the book, and there's definitely some overlap with some of the main characters in the book, which is out in paperback today. But yeah. I mean, I think the book started me on this journey and being interested in this set of characters. I had no idea how to actually turn this into a film, and Ross brought both all this expertise and vision, but also I think fresh eyes to all this. I had been immersed in this world for too many years, you might argue, and it gets hard to tell sort of what makes sense for a mainstream audience. You lose a lot of perspective, and so Ross was just this incredible partner to see how he did his work and approach this. And so he kind of, I think it's fair to say, focused on a couple of the characters from the book and sort of the heart of some of the friendships that are in the book.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ashley, I mean, we've had some overlap now with the people we've interviewed, but Ross, for someone, it sounds like you weren't that familiar with what was going on in the space industry. Was this hard to sort of get on board with?
I mean, most subjects that I take on, I don't know much about, and that's kind of the fun of it. You very quickly become really well versed, and get up to speed on what's going on. Yeah, I didn't know anything about space. Followed it very loosely, like most people out there, and it's really, for me, it's really kind of one of the things I do is like I come at it from the wider general public audience's point of view, which is really not knowing much. Most people don't. So it was eye-opening, to say the least, and so much more fun than I ever thought it would be.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm obviously in the Elon Musk and SpaceX echo chamber online. I really like that. This is giving some other companies some time in the spotlight. So shall we play the trailer?
Let's do it.
All right. Hopefully there's enough people on. So we are going to play the trailer.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
You've heard about the billionaire space race.
Shit.
This isn't that movie. We're in the midst of a revolution in space. It's like the Wild West.
The era of governments controlling this stuff is over.
At Astra Space, I run a secret rocket company.
Chris is this living embodiment of Silicon Valley.
I'm a scientist and he is a capitalist.
We're trying to build NASA at 1/1,000,000th the budget. And people take this shit really seriously, right?
If you're declaring to the world that you have a product that works, it better bloody work. No, I started Rocket Lab in 2006.
You could not have a more unlikely background for starting a rocket company.
No university education, no aerospace background. Fuck it, let's start a company.
Peter's rocket is a very high-performance machine, but it's expensive to build. We often get accused of building Ferraris. We're more like a Ford, a much more high-volume product. If Peter's not right, Peter loses. If I'm not right, I adapt. We hit something. Fuck.
I'm not built to build shit.
I'm gonna fucking crucify him.
The fabric of our civilization runs on satellites.
There is a lot of money to be made up there.
Space is now open for business.
Nothing's riding on this, except things like our right to privacy.
There are commercial companies that have nothing to do with governments snapping pictures day after day.
And the power of the world falling into the wrong hands.
So now you have thousands of satellites which themselves are potentially weapons.
And whoever controls space may very well control the future of humanity.
Yes.
Well, we'll make one thing clear. It's apparently you can curse on HBO, right?
Yes, exactly. That was just what I was about to say.
There's some
On HBO Max tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Wednesday, July 17th, 9 p.m.
And we did have someone say that they're in the UK. Any possibility of them being able to watch this?
Yes, it will be all over the world. There's kind of different release dates in different spots, and it depends how HBO and its partners team up on that. It was pretty interesting in New Zealand, where Rocket Lab is based. I think the movie was set to go out in November, and there was a public cry to move this up, and so it's coming out on the 19th now, and even made the national news there. And I think in the UK it's through Sky, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow, that's crazy that they moved it up that much. Why did they have to wait until November originally, or was that just
this is minutia of TV streaming distribution that I know very little about.
Yeah, no, I mean, people just make their schedules based on availability and time slots, and wow. I think this film really resonates with a lot of people, not just the space community, and I think people are really getting very excited by it. So I think that's part of the reason it's pushed up.
Right. And so, the three main players that you guys are highlighting, Astra, Rocket Lab, and then Planet. And it's interesting. I was sort of more familiar with Astra in recent times. So it was cool to see sort of their beginnings. And I don't want to give too much away, but, you've been working on this for 6 years.
Yeah. And, full credit to Chris Kemp for... We had a conversation kind of right. I'd heard rumors about Astra. Somebody said, "Oh, there's this secret rocket company based in San Francisco," and I sort of caught wind of it. I'd known Chris Kemp from many years back when he used to work at NASA Ames, actually, and then did a cloud computing startup. And anyway, Chris and I touched base in the very earliest days of Astra, and one of the things that made this film possible, and I think some people give Chris a little grief about, because Astra's had its struggles, but I think was a very courageous decision. He said, "Look, I don't know which way this thing's going to go, but if you would like to follow what it's like to see a rocket company get made from scratch, you can tell the real story, no matter how this ends up." And there's almost nobody, there's not many people that would have the courage to do that. And I think it's we're lucky because you don't usually get to have a camera in these rooms, or to be there when it's the first 5 people trying to make this engine work for the first time. And so this is stuff we don't usually get to see. It's real, and I just think it's a blessing that we were able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were all over the place, documenting a lot of companies at once. How much travel did you have to do for this film?
Well, um, this kind of happened at different stages. So I was doing the book and I was traveling a lot for that. New Zealand, Ukraine, French Guiana. I was trying to get like the lay of the land for the different characters that I really wanted to zero in on. It was like this very frenetic time in commercial space where once SpaceX kind of started to hit its stride, it was like there were 100 rocket startups all over the world, and it was like, who are you gonna follow? And so I was doing a lot of traveling for that, and then started to be like, look, we should document this on camera. I mean, I had no idea really. I've never made a film before. Ross is the Oscar-winning amazing pro, so I was just sort of stumbling around with a camera for a while, and then Ross and I was lucky enough to meet him, and he was kind enough to sort of take my jumble of footage that I assembled and start to hone in on the story, that really kind of, I think, it appealed to him the most, and then to keep adding to this film and shape it. And so, yeah. So anyway, I traipsed around the world, and we did our fair share of traipsing for the film at this different stage as well.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, for us, and my film team, at a certain point when we came on, it was 2022? I don't even remember. Ashley had shot like for, I don't know, a few years, I think about 250 hours of footage. And, so our job and my job was to sort of cull through all that. And it was really fascinating, actually, because the very first footage was really poorly shot. It was terrible. And then as the footage progressed, it got a little better and better, almost like the trajectory of a company. This a scrappy company, they're all over the place, and you get better and better. And then at a certain point, we went through the footage and we're trying to figure out what the story would, what it could be, because it could go in many different directions. Ashley's book follows so many different companies, and we had to pick a few. And so at a certain point, we said, all right, there's this core group of people that came out of NASA. There's Robbie Shingler, Will Marshall, Chris Kemp, under the tutelage of Pete Worden. And, this idea of Pete's kids came through sort of really clearly to me. And I love this idea of found family. So I talked to the whole team, talked to Ashley, and I said, I think this is the core of the film. And it held. Like, you don't know, right? And so we looked at all this footage, and then we went on filming for another year and really sort of caught the tail end of the story and where it's ended up so far. So it was a great process for me.
And sorry, can I just to jump in super quick, just because I think it's the first time we kind of brought up Pete Worden. For people watching the film and or reading the book, I think Pete Worden will be this revelatory character. He was a brigadier general in the Air Force who's also an astrophysicist, is a total iconoclast who's worked in the most bureaucratic organizations in the world and done everything possible to make them less bureaucratic, most often resulting in him getting fired repeatedly from any job he holds. And there's like, without question, look, Elon Musk has kind of pushed commercial space forward more than anyone else, but I think Pete is a close second that most people do not know about, and this film will make it sort of quite clear how this individual really sort of engineered a lot of this stuff to happen very thoughtfully and comically.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and fun fact, I'm actually pretty good friends with Jonathan McDowell. So I was like, oh my gosh, there you are. He did a great job.
He's awesome.
He's a gift. He's such a wonderful person.
He's great. So, I'm a full-time space journalist. There's constantly things going on in the industry. It's like the news cycle never stops. How did you know really when to put down the pen or the camera, so to speak?
Films aren't finished. They're just stopped. At a certain point, you have to say, all right, this film could keep going today and keep going. I mean, look what just happened with Elon and, with his recent
Falcon 9.
Not making it, and Peter Beck launching his 50th rocket.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. So, I mean, the story can keep going. But at a certain point, we thought, all right, this is where we're going to end. And it's really fascinating because I think the best. It's a little grandiose, but the best endings are new beginnings a lot of the time. And I think this film is a perfect example of that. We're just at the beginning of this whole journey in space.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the book was the same sort of blessing and curse. It's like, where do you kind of stop? I mean, I think some of the stuff is just so exciting and then important that it felt to me like this needs to get out in the world, just because I don't think the public pays a lot of attention to really what's happening in commercial space. And it's important that lots of people have voices on this. I tend to be quite optimistic and sort of hope for the best on all this stuff. I just think the public, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that we repeat all the mistakes that we've made on Earth in space. And as we know, humans have a tendency to do just that every time they enter a new area that is a kind of new playground. And so anyway, it just felt like a good time to get some of this out and have the conversation around this, what's going on.
Definitely. I mean, like I said, I quit my job in TV news to cover this full time about 2 years ago. And still, a lot of people know about SpaceX, or at least I think more people know about what SpaceX is doing. So I really like that you guys were able to highlight the many startups and companies that there are, and also how hard this actually is. So how did you go about narrowing down who you wanted to shadow?
And that's a great question. Like I said, Ashley's book covered a variety of companies. I mean, several. I can't even tell you. I mean, 8, 9, 10 different profiles of different companies. And at a certain point, we did have to sort of figure out, all right, who are we going to cut? Who are we going to follow? And as I said before, it was this idea of like this found family of Pete's kids, but also then you have Peter Beck in Rocket Lab, this outlier, and he comes into the picture when he meets Pete Warden. And he gets sort of this really incredible review from Pete Warden that helps him continue the company. And so for us, it was like core group and Peter Beck, and let's tell this story from those different players' point of view.
Yeah, Peter Beck. I didn't know as much about Rocket Lab, and I'd actually never heard him speak, and he seems like a pretty humble guy. I liked his quote about, don't talk about it, do it. Yeah. I think that's good advice for all of us. Do you think that we'd ever see a SpaceX Blue Origin sequel?
It's possible. I think we're just talking about Peter. I mean, hopefully he is a revelation to people in this film, because there really is, Jeff Bezos gets all this attention, but it is Peter Beck who is Elon Musk and SpaceX's competition. And what an incredible story. I mean, this should not happen. The guy did not go to college. He's a self-taught everything. He was born pretty much at the end of the Earth, as close to Antarctica as you can get. And you shouldn't be able to start a space company in New Zealand. It has no aerospace anything. They barely have some commercial airplanes down there. And so what he's done is just as remarkable a story as SpaceX. And so I don't know. We'll have to see what Jeff could do. I sort of feel like the sequel might be the really ending up as sort of like Peter versus Elon as this story plays out. And I think people are going to be blown away to learn about this guy.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely blown away. Like I said, I know a whole lot about SpaceX, but it definitely makes me want to take a trip to New Zealand.
Yeah. It was one of the things I loved about Ashley's book, and I mean, this film is, I don't know if we clarified it, but this film is based, inspired by Ashley's book. Let's see it. It's on my phone.
Where's yours?
It's on my phone, actually, my computer.
Out in paperback today.
Exactly. It's inspired by Ashley's book. And what I loved about Ashley's book was its tone. It's irreverent, sardonic, fun, playful, intense, extremely well researched, and when I read the book and talked to Ashley, I mean, we just got along like that. And I got the tone of the book, and I was thinking, how are we going to infuse this tone into the film? And the footage had some of that, but it was like, how do we really drive this home? And that was a huge part of the fun for us, is just trying to really capture that playful nature and the insanity of this business. I don't think it's ever been seen on a film before like this.
No, definitely not. And, I think it's interesting how Peter thought that his dream would be to work at NASA. And it's like NASA's bureaucratic and, not like either of these companies really are. So I like showing this other side of the space industry and what's happening with commercial space.
I mean, I think it's just my favorite part about the movie, I think, is rightly, space is exciting, and it tends to get covered in this very flattering way of our most courageous pilots are going up to be astronauts. Yeah, and there's no problem we can't solve if we put enough MIT PhDs on it, and the world is different now, and this stuff is hard, and you never get to see really how hard it is at best, which in this case I guess is actually kind of the worst. You see a rocket blow up in the sky, but you don't know what went into that, and the toil and the passion and the suffering, and this, as far as I'm aware, is like the first time you actually get to see this in real life. I guess we've had some dramatized versions from Hollywood of things going wrong and people solving problems, but this is like the only real look at what is both exciting and also there's some drudgery to all this. I think people miss out on how real this is, and so we wanted to show some of that as well. Sometimes you're stuck in Alaska for a month trying to launch a rocket that won't launch, and people start going a little crazy, and you get to see what that looks like.
Yeah, talk about maybe what was the hardest part for both of you guys making this documentary?
I can start if you want.
Hey, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, the hardest part for me is I had no idea what I was doing, and I started out sort of raising some money to go do this. Had some things go sideways, ran out of money, pitched it, got shot down a bunch of times, and then Ross arrived, kind of like a miracle for me, really, because I'd been at this for a long time and didn't really know what I was doing and didn't know how to contain and shape the story or where to go. And so anyway, this for me, this is the closest thing I've ever had to like actually being at a startup where I was like feeling what Astra in particular was kind of going through as I was trying to get this thing going. And so it actually gave me a lot of sympathy, really, for anyone who tries to do a project like this. Ross has made a bunch of documentaries, and I think probably each one has its own dramatic story behind it. But this is the first time I went through something like that.
Are you gonna be okay?
I'm much better now.
No, it's always a wild ride, and I mean, for me, I love the relationships that I'm able to form and build with, not only my colleagues, the people I'm making the films with, but the people in the film, and really getting to know Chris Kemp and Robbie Shingler and Will Marshall and Pete Warden and Peter Beck, and it's a beautiful thing that I can go and meet these people that I would never ever in a million years get to meet and get to really know. So that to me is really kind of precious, and it's also hard. It's hard going in. Ashley has a relationship with these people, and then I sort of take the reins, and for 2 years I'm working with them, and through some of the toughest times, for Chris and for some of the other companies, and I give Chris Kemp, as I said, a lot of credit for opening up and being really just sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's what I love. That's what I love, is just really getting into that and really understanding and working with people.
Yeah. He's very driven. You have some very interesting characters.
That is the word. Yeah.
Across the board. I don't want to give too much away, but wow. Did not know much about him either, at least his personality. I know that we only have a few more minutes, but this comes out tomorrow, so let's remind people again. And how are you feeling on the eve of the debut?
Ashley?
Well, I am so thrilled. I can hang out for a few more minutes if Ross can.
Yeah, he can.
I got a message that we have a hard out, so just trying to respect your time. You guys can tell me when you want to leave.
Well, I just saw some questions in here. I didn't know.
Let's.
But yes, no, I'm thrilled. I'm so excited. I hope everybody watches this film. It comes out tomorrow. Obviously, you can watch it after that, but please click away. Let HBO know that let's create the demand for the sequel that you were talking about.
Yeah. Any reason why you kind of went with HBO, or is that just sort of who bit?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you make a film like this, you're working on it for years. You're trying to figure out who's going to be the best partner, right? Who's going to be able to bring this film and really understand it. And at a certain point, HBO, there were a lot of people who were curious about the film, but at a certain point, HBO was very evident they understood the material. Actually, you can expand on that.
100%. I mean, sometimes you just have these conversations as you're pitching these things, and one hurdle with this is the obvious thing is that most people want to see a movie about Elon Musk versus Jeff Bezos, and that was just not the story we were interested in telling. There's been a bunch of SpaceX films out there, and it just, I don't know, it just felt kind of obvious to me. I mean, you could make that film, it just seemed like there was a very interesting other world, and HBO really were the people that were most open to and dialed in to this idea of kind of zagging or zigging while everyone else was zagging, and telling the story that maybe had been missed, or that was equally dramatic, just in a very different way. And so it's kind of like rare these days. Obviously, the streamers, everyone's competing for attention, and the tendency is always to pick the celebrity or the richest person or this or that. And so HBO is a place that actually cares about telling amazing stories, and was open to that idea from the very first moment.
Yeah, I've been working with HBO for years, and they're just the best. I just love them, and they totally get it. And they gave Ashley and I, they understood material and gave us really the freedom to craft the film that we really wanted to make.
And curse.
Yes. Well, it'd be hard to make this without cursing, especially with Chris and Peter, I think.
Yeah. Actually, now that you've done both, which is harder, writing a book or creating a documentary?
Wow, that is a brutal question. I think they both have clear to me now, they both are journeys, and you start out in this the beginning is always the most fun because your eyes are wide open and you're absorbing information, and there's always this kind of middle stage where it happens on every single book, and now it's at least happened to me on every film I've tried to make, where there's a crisis and something goes wrong, and it feels impossible for a second. So I don't know, they're very different. A book is such a lonely, solitary experience when you get to the writing part, because you really are in this cave all by yourself, and there's something awesome about that, and there's something awful about it. And the filmmaking is you just have a quite a large team and all these collaborators, and you get to bounce things off. So anyway, I feel very lucky to get to experience both. But they are both journeys. There's not a lot of money in documentaries. People should know that, this is not, we don't do this to get rich. That's for sure. It's just for love of kind of telling the story. And so I hope people can feel that and know that.
Definitely. Let's take some audience questions. Harrison wants to know, if you had to remake the film now that you've experienced the process, what would be different, if anything? I could
start on my end, I guess. Like when I first started, kind of like we mentioned, I mean, I was setting out to tell like a multi-part series across at least 6 countries, and as a first time sort of hobbyist filmmaker that was perhaps too ambitious, and so I learned a big lesson on I think kind of focusing and really honing in on the best story, and so I think spent a lot of time chasing things that did not really have a chance of ever making it into a film. And so anyway, that was the lesson I learned, is to just get a little more dialed in and focused from the outset, I think. And
Yeah, but I'm just going to jump in and say that's part of the filmmaking process. When you're really following stories and you don't really know what's going on, those a lot of times make the best films. You're just like sort of searching for the story as it's going, and you're trying to figure out what you should focus on. So for me, Ashley, you did exactly what you should have done. No, honestly, that's it's hard. It's a different way of making films, but a lot of times it's more fruitful in the end. So
Right.
I would just say you did great.
Well, okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important lesson. As a journalist in TV news, I would often have an idea of the questions that I wanted to ask, but I can't write the story by myself until I know what the story is, and until I'm at the scene or talking to the person. Maybe something completely unexpected, nugget of information comes out of it. So I think that's a really good lesson.
Thanks for that question, Harrison.
Yeah, Lucius wants to know, are you going to release a behind the scenes? And I would argue that the documentary is behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think people are going to be shocked. I mean, watch this film. I saw another thing on Twitter. People are like, oh, are you going to release the B-roll? I'm like, well, I think we got the A material out there, and it's as behind the scenes as you could possibly get.
Yeah, I think once people see the film, they're going to really understand. You've never seen space like this. You've never seen behind the scenes. That's exactly what the film's about. It's all about what happens behind the scenes.
Well, I interviewed Tom Mueller as well as Ashley, and one of the hard things about that interview, it was a 15-minute video, and I've had a month worth of back and forth edits, blurring things out for ITAR. Did you guys have a lot of issues with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, we had amazing editor Patient Porter, incredible producer Jay Callahan. I mean, we spent hours, days, weeks just trying to just figure out, make sure no one goes to jail when this film is seen. ITAR was a huge concern, and there's so many different concerns when you're making a movie like this, but ITAR, things like that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's also, it's like, credit to these companies, because when we first went in, it's like, we're going to deal with this ITAR stuff seriously, but in the meantime, we're running around with our camera, and you've got to trust that we'll live up to our word, because otherwise, look, everybody probably gets in trouble if something like that goes wrong, but it's hard when you're trying to film, because usually you go into a rocket company and they're like, you can only point your camera at this one particular spot in this room, and that was never going to work for the type of documentary we were going to tell. And so whether it's Chris Kemp, Peter Beck, all of their communications staff who were incredible, Planet, same thing, just giving us the trust that we would do the right thing in the end made a huge difference.
Yeah, there's a reason I interviewed Elon in the SpaceX lobby, because that was already, pre-approved. Tell me, were there any interesting restrictions out of New Zealand?
Not really. Same thing. The ITAR rules apply there, and I'd say Rocket Lab was at a little more advanced stage than Astra, so they sort of take themselves a little more seriously at that point. I would say Peter, I think it's fair to say, is a little more conservative than Chris Kemp on some of these things, and would place a few more restrictions. But otherwise, like from a government perspective, I mean, they're basically treated like an American company, and New Zealand has less regulation than the United States, and so nothing special that was New Zealand related.
Michael wants to know, will this film ever be brought to theaters?
Oh, maybe if 100 million of you watch it online.
Never know. At this point, HBO is the best place to see it for sure.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, July 17th, 9 p.m.
Yes.
America.
Yes. PIDS Media says for a sequel, a deep dive into the Indian and Chinese space industries would be intriguing. I agree with that. You know, what happens now? What's next for both of you?
Well, I have been covering space for a very long time and neglected my family for quite some time doing this book and this film. I think I'm spaced out for a little bit. I think I'll always be following the industry and covering. I got to take a break for a little bit. I've been getting into. I've got a new book project in the works that's on OpenAI and Sam Altman and also have been spending a lot of time following Brian Johnson, the longevity guru, and I've got a couple fun things in store for people on that one, and so that's where I've been spending my time lately.
Yeah, and it's funny. I actually also have a film about AI and education and the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to those two intersecting subjects. And there's always, as a documentary, we're always juggling, a million different balls and just making sure you're going to be working. So,
who do you want to see Wild Space the most?
Oh, I mean, I love that the space community has already, we put the trailer up on Twitter and I could see all my space friends and space friends I didn't know I knew I had rushed to it, but I think obviously this was made for people like that, but I really hope the general public watches this. Anytime I do anything, I keep my sister-in-law in mind. She's a doctor. She has no interest in technology, but she's a educated, smart, lovely person who has no interest in most of the things I have a deep interest in. And I just always think if I could somehow tell the story well enough that it appeals to her, that's kind of, then I've maybe done my job, and that it might get escape velocity, get past max Q to the wider audience.
I'm sitting here smiling because my person is my brother. He's not like necessarily a film guru. He doesn't do deep dives into documentaries necessarily. So he's my guy who I'm like, if I can reach him and he loves the film and he really, gets all of his friends to watch it, I know I've, preached beyond the choir. And that's really, I just love the fact that, I've had some pretty good luck with some of my films that they really went beyond the immediate obvious audience to a huge general audience. And I think this film will get out there. I'm really excited by it.
Yeah, and I think you do a great job of bringing it down to earth, so to speak, so that people that aren't familiar with the space industry at all can kind of get a grasp and get a sense of what's going on. Because man, you guys are right. It's just the beginning, and that's part of the reason why I quit my full-time job to cover this, because we're just getting started.
Absolutely, and it feels like a historical document to me in some ways, and so I really hope people appreciate that that we had cameras there when all this stuff was going on at this moment in time, and hopefully we're able to tell it in an entertaining way.
Yeah, I encourage every single person on my channel to watch it. I know that you're gonna love it. I loved it, so tomorrow's the day. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add or let people know before we let you go?
I just want to say thank you. You're incredible. I've heard a lot about you, and you're really one of the major voices in this industry. So thank you for having us on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for giving us the time. We really appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time to watch it.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's and maybe some people don't like to read, so I think it's great that it is in this gripping film format. You will not lose your interest watching this documentary.
It's a fun one. So.
Yeah, I don't know how you fit all of the stuff that you did into it. I was actually shocked how many, topics that you were able to cover. And that's the thing. It's really endless. Man, you could make a film every year, Obviously it takes much longer than a year though to do it justice.
No, I like that idea. Let's do it.
Yeah, Ashley, you're inspiring me to, dream bigger and do more. And so you guys both do great work. And thank you so much for hopping on, and congrats.
Thank you. Thanks for your kind words. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Take care. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. You guys can hop off. I'm just going to play the trailer again for people. So.
All right. Thank you so much.
You have a great day. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. I think it's just me. I just thought that I would play the trailer again for you guys because I know that some of you are just joining, but I was able to watch this last night and it was great. It's about an hour and 33 minutes. And so let's play the trailer for you again, just so you know what film we're talking about.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
You've heard about the billionaire space race.
Shit.
This isn't that movie. We're in the midst of a revolution in space. It's like the Wild West.
The era of governments controlling this stuff is over.
At Astra Space, I run a secret rocket company.
Chris is this living embodiment of Silicon Valley.
I'm a scientist and he is a capitalist.
We're trying to build NASA at 1/1,000,000th the budget. And people take this shit really seriously, right?
If you're declaring to the world that you have a product that works, it better bloody work. I started Rocket Lab in 2006.
You could not have a more unlikely background for starting a rocket company.
No university education, no aerospace background. Fuck it, let's start a company.
Peter's rocket is a very high-performance machine, but it's expensive to build. We often get accused of building Ferraris. We're more like a Ford, a much more high-volume product. If Peter's not right, Peter loses. If I'm not right, I adapt. We hit something. Fuck.
I'm not built to build shit.
I'm gonna fucking crucify him.
The fabric of our civilization runs on satellites.
There is a lot of money to be made up there.
Space is now open for business.
Nothing's riding on this, except things like our right to privacy.
There are commercial companies that have nothing to do with governments snapping pictures day after day.
And the power of the world falling into the wrong hands.
So now you have thousands of satellites which themselves are potentially weapons.
And whoever controls space may very well control the future of humanity.
All right. So that is the trailer. Like I said, I saw it last night. I had a pre-screening here in my house, and it was really great. I know a lot of us know the story of SpaceX. We have the book Liftoff by Eric Berger, but this was really interesting to hear and, follow the journeys of Astra as well as Rocket Lab and even Planet. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. I was reached out to by HBO or someone on this press circuit, and they asked if I wanted to cover this. And I thought you guys would really enjoy hearing from Ashley and from Ross, who, didn't have a lot of experience in this, but he's an Oscar-winning director. So they did a great job. Ross, you make a good point. The trailer sells the documentary well. It is definitely a wide-ranging documentary covering a lot more than just, two sort of companies having a rivalry. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you learned, just a little bit more about. I love the fact that there's even a documentary covering what's going on with commercial space right now. So yes, Ross, you read my mind. I urge you to try and get an interview with Peter Beck. I've never been to New Zealand. As many of you guys know, I love to travel. I love to see the world. So I'm like, I need to make that happen. I just need to get him to agree, And then I'm going to New Zealand. I would love that. So, you know, they are, like Ashley said, he really thinks that we have SpaceX, and pretty soon he thinks Rocket Lab could be on the same level. You know, as many of you might know, they're working on a reusable sort of their own version of Falcon 9 right now. So very exciting film. Hope that you guys get to watch it on HBO, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this live stream. It was really great to hear from both of them. As many of you know, Ashley wrote this book. He also wrote a book about Elon Musk. I think he might have been the first one to write a book about Elon Musk. And so, yeah, it's a great film. And I hope that you guys are having a great morning. And thank you so much for tuning in. I know I don't normally do a morning live stream, but it was great hearing from them, and I'm glad that they gave us their time. So I'm going to edit sort of a condensed version of this live stream, because obviously it's 45 minutes long. So I'm going to work on that right now, but I hope that you guys are having a great Tuesday. I have a pretty busy week ahead of me. I'm going to be walking in a STEM-themed fashion show here in Austin this weekend. So a lot of people are flying in for this. I'm lucky enough to have it here in my backyard, and it's a lot of female engineers and scientists, and then me. I'm a space journalist, but I certainly don't have a background like they do. And so we are going to be walking in custom STEM-themed dresses for a STEM fashion show. So hopefully I can get some behind the scenes of that. Uncle Yukon, thank you for watching the stream. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Chris says he caught the end of this, had no idea the film existed. He will watch it tomorrow. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it too. Thank you, Pete, for putting the link up there. So hbo.com/movie/wild wild space. It is pretty wild. It's the Wild West of the space industry right now. And yeah, they man, there were some very interesting characters. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And so I didn't want to give too much away, because obviously the film comes out tomorrow, but it would be fun to do a recap after people see the film, and to see what you guys think of it. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for supporting my channel. I'm kind of shocked to see how quickly the channel's growing. I think obviously interviewing Elon Musk helped give me a boost. And so I'm really thankful for that. And I just hope that the growth continues. You know, I got that plaque, 100,000 subscribers, and now we're over 118,000. So pretty crazy. But not as crazy as it can get. So I'm hoping that the content, you know, is still interesting and relevant for you guys. That's the only way to make the channel grow. And I was surprised too, because I recently monetized a second channel. I did a video about Disneyland in Tokyo being better than Disneyland in the United States. And it has almost 100,000 views, which is a lot for a channel that's kind of a nothing channel. And so recently that got monetized, and I'm like, wow, it was hard for me to believe I'd monetize one channel, be able to go full time on one channel, and then monetize a second channel. So again, disclaimer, I'm not making Tim Dodd money, but that's yet, you know, maybe someday it'll be pretty cray. I don't know if you guys watch Mr. Beast. He put out a video recently with, you know, 50 of the world's biggest YouTubers competing for $1 million for their subscribers. And I was like, dude, these people have so many subscribers. Like, I think it's pretty crazy to have over 100,000, and some of these people have like 20 million. Like, how that's unfathomable to me. Mr. Beast has over 300 million. It really is crazy. Really is crazy. Uncle Yukon, thank you for sharing my link for Elevated. So that is my second channel. Instead of Elevated, I named it Elevated. So thanks to my cousin for that one. It's at Elevated9819. So hopefully you guys enjoy that video. I've been told it's very interesting. So yeah. Oh, what's on my left hand? Maxwell wants to know. I went rock climbing like 3 days ago, and I ripped my palm open. So that's called a flapper. For some reason, after doing a route, I was like, oh, my palm is ripped open. So that is what is on my hand. Thank you, Ross, for saying you're hot on the heels of Tim Dodd. At the rate your channel is growing, I have quite a ways to go to get to Tim Dodd level, but I'm very, very inspired by Tim Dodd. I'm actually going to a conference called Vid Summit in Dallas, and that's going to be happening in September. And Mr. Beast is going to be there. This is, for full-time YouTubers. And so I'm really excited to hopefully get some good tips and, insight about continuing to grow a YouTube channel. I don't have a team yet. So it's still just me, myself, and I. So eventually I will, but obviously it's nice not to have anyone on payroll. But yeah, just sorry, I'm ranting. But thank you guys so much for supporting my channel. Hope that you guys are enjoying the content, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.